Perfect. Okay, I guess we can get started.
You're fine.
Call the meeting to order. If we have a quorum, we have Joseph Quitzlin, Dave Tinas, Jeff Bunt, Bob Martin, Glenn Reed, and myself, and the Harbor Master, Glorianne, and the Assembly Member Wallheater and Mayor Jensen. So, we got the minutes from the last meeting. You see them in front of you there.
I make a motion to approve the regular meetings of March 18th minutes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. We're gonna move one of the items because some guys aren't gonna be able to be here the whole meeting. Dave, you have to leave?
Yeah, I leave just before 1.
Okay. So which, we wanna move up the electrical request?
Yeah,
That-
like,
that-
I mean, if, I don't know, is Chris Jensen coming? He's not gonna come?
No,
Okay,
he said it's pieces money.
You guys have enough to vote on things without your...
yeah.
Right, so we just wanted to, if you, make sure everybody was here. It's kind of an important item, but there is no visitors. So what we'd have to do is amend the meeting agenda and approve it. If you guys want to change that, there's no reason to change it, I guess. We can just go through it. I think we'll be done before he has to leave anyway,
Okay.
so. Okay, everybody like the way the agenda looks? Entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda as written.
Second?
Okay, it's moved and seconded. All those in favor of the meeting agenda as written, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Okay, no visitors. Anybody have any views unrelated to the agenda? No, I'm hearing none. Views related to the agenda, no visitors. So the Harbor Master report.
Okay, well, I passed that out to you. Did I keep a copy for myself? No, Harbor Master's report, didn't I? I didn't keep a copy for myself. Jeez, I thought I made so many of them.
Oh, here.
Okay, thank you. I'll give it back to you.
And you don't have it
Okay.
memorized?
Huh? Yeah, okay. So just regular things are going on with staff. Maintenance things, we've been focusing here the last week or so on the cranes. We've replaced the pin on the upper and lower, on the rams on the number 2, replaced the upper and lower pins. Number 1, we've tooled the shivs on the upper and lower pins and replaced as well the complete motor, and we're having piston and rudder rebuild the old motor, so that the new motor is running about $7,000. So we figured we could rebuild the old one and have it ready for the next time for about half that. So we're going to go ahead and do that. I have enough money to see that gets done here before the end of the year. If you notice, we're priming and going to paint them, attaching signal charts. And we should be passed with flying colors our audit that happens every year. So we've just been doing other odds and ends, lots of spring cleanup with the green slime and washing the floats, put in a couple bike racks, redid the tidal measurements in the south grid. We have them ready to go in the north grid, but they're going to be pulling pilings and stuff, so we're just going to wait till after they get done there. Done the maintenance on the harbor skiff. Working on new signage out at Scow Bay in the harbor, and we rebuilt our tour ship freshwater potable backflow preventer. So we're back in compliance with that. North Harbor, we're back on track with Western Dock. We had our pre-construction meeting last week, and I've been visiting with the Corps of Engineers sub, which is Pacific Pile, been talking about how they're going to play together, those two groups. Lots of boats transferring. Nothing recent on the drive down. Next scheduled review will be towards the end of May, early June. Road transfer, I don't know if any of you caught the KFSK report, but Mike Lux and I have been talking about ramping up the idea of the state proposing transferring those 3 facilities to the borough. So he's coming up with an offer, and it'll hit the borough assembly, and then we'll see what they want to task us with. Budget, we met up with the budget on Monday, and I have the final attached here. I went ahead and applied for both of those grants, mitigation grants. We asked for almost 46,000 for the trolley work float, and almost 226,000 for the new fish cleaning station and float down in the South Harbor. And the harbor's starting to ramp up, so. Any questions?
Well, can I ask a quick question on the TWIC cards?
Yeah.
Is the government gonna enforce the TWIC cards for mariners? When they issued them, they were talking about everybody had to have one if you had a license.
Yeah, they've kind of backed off on some of those requirements. I think the 6-pack guys don't have to have them anymore, but some of them
I think there is still a
are.
requirement.
Is it?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Can I ask a question about
Yeah.
the contract saga with Amoco and Western Knox Bridge? I kind of lost track on that, whatever became of that.
Well, we went through their hearing, and we haven't heard anything back.
Okay.
So, formally, nothing formal. Big Jim was in the office again 20 minutes ago and asked me where I could get ice, so I don't know. Tamco has until the end of the month, I believe it was 30
May
days.
1st.
So May
Okay.
1, I think, is when kind of it's all.
Date for repercussions?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so we're carrying on.
Good.
Any idea what color you're gonna paint the cranes?
Actually, yes, we've already ordered the paint, and it's a gold. It's a goldy color, a little bit probably duller than what it was before. Or like this.
I was thinking red and white stripes.
Oh. Yeah, yeah.
Are they going to be back in operation soon, or?
They're both back in operation.
Okay.
Yep, they're both back in operation. We had a boat, we had Bob Kerr poised, ready underneath it, and he was the very first pick of the big crane yesterday. So he came in and talked to me about it, and he said it looked great.
So there's gonna be new signage on them?
Yeah, hand signals.
Oh.
So, yeah, we have.
There is gonna be signage?
Yes, we
Oh,
have.
that'd be
to.
interesting. That'll be-
Well,
yeah.
the one we had is kind of worn out, so we got a mark on our report card.
Someone might actually understand what you're doing.
Okay, so any other questions for Glow?
All else fails.
Okay, unfinished business, the 2013-14 budget.
So I just put a copy of it in there for you. It's pretty much what we went over last go around, no real changes. Just point out those grants, they're under income, and then they're also under outcome out of expenditures if we get them. Nothing really too exciting. We put in a little bit on for maybe a new computer if it blows up, because ours are getting kind of old. We're going to replace the outboard on the skiff. So we do get a nice trade-in on that, $2,500 trade-in on that. Fire department wants to put on a cycle of replacing the fire pumps in the harbor. So we're going to buy one this year and see how that goes. So that's about it.
The motor needs to be replaced on the full harbor skid?
We are 2 years overdue. We like to do that on a fairly, like every 5 years, and we're on 7.
Well, I know what I was going to ask. How many hours?
On that outboard? I'm not sure exactly. It's been such a good little outboard, and we didn't want to trade it in, and Rocky recommended. He services it every year, and he keeps track of all of that. And so we got an extra 2 years out of it, but
I remember Ellis's brother used to run outboards up to Stikine, and he said when they reach 800 hours, get rid of them.
oh, yeah.
So I don't know if we haven't reached 800 hours, then maybe we should
I
hang
bet
on
it's
to
over
it.
that.
Yeah.
What's that?
Bet
Sure,
it's over
so
that.
runs nice though.
Yeah,
It
it's
doesn't run
nice.
very hard, but
I know, I
the
love
idle
that little
around.
outboard.
Check boats. all the
It's
time.
been-
Won't be lined up at the surplus sale.
Yeah, yeah. I know guys are already lining up to say, so, put me on the list for that one when it comes through.
That's a good one. Okay, is there any questions on the budget? No, hearing none. Just gonna move on to the North Harbor construction schedule review.
So I just wanted you guys to be aware of the contractor put this together. It's in your packet. It kind of outlines how they're gonna move through the process, just to give you a good idea. We're gonna start by demolition and how that actually, the way they're gonna start is at the end of number 2 and kind of work in and then work out, leaving the kestrel to the very end. Kestrel float to the very end. And then they're going to pretty much have to abandon that, turn it over to the Corps. But they hope to, because all of their work is going to be done off the barge. They're not going to do anything from, like building from land. So they want to demo as fast as they can and then get in and start some of that upland approach work right beside the buildings. So maybe drive some piling so that they can stay busy doing stuff from the street. And if the contractor, the Corps contractor, won't let them in the basin until November 1. So anyway, they're going to start there, and then they're going to start talking about doing the field work starting November 1, where they're going to bring in the floats and start driving piling and all of that, and how that'll go. They'll again start one side and move to the other. Where they're going to store some stuff, then talk about the utilities, and they're shooting to be done in the middle of April, so with final completion mid-May, end of May. So, and the last thing that'll go on are the anodes, which is a whole other group that come in and just apply the anodes. So, just wanted you guys to be aware of how it's going to work.
Flo, did you have a chance to talk to Pacific Pile? What's their schedule?
They they'd love to come in August as well. So I think everybody's going to be Johnny on the spot to get started as soon as they
No,
can.
as soon as they're
September
bridges out
1
of there,
is,
they'd like to come in and start digging.
and September 1, and that's where, I don't think the dredge will start before September 1 because Western wants to stay and work up to the last second before they're kicked out at the end of August. So everybody's going to kind of really use their
Well, just kind of an update on that. They're starting to go a little active on our dock facility out there to get the transfer bridge ready to go. So,
okay.
So I was just
Who's
curious.
doing that work, S&S, or is it?
S&S is doing it through Rock and Road right now, but
Yeah. Okay.
I had a question for Glenn. Does it look like it's not gonna be a problem getting the bridge going?
talk to me in a couple weeks when I get all the cable and blocks here and try it.
Yeah, that looks heavy duty. What's the plan? Is he gonna use that to drive down onto the barge and remove the
Back the dump trucks right onto the barge and load them right on the barge and
drive?
up the ramp. But the good news is yesterday or a couple days ago, we had an electrician out and the old, actually it's not that old, but the winch, the electric winch that was installed 25 years ago is still operational. I mean, it seems like it's working fine. A little grease on it, so we'll see. The biggest problem we're having is I wasn't around when it was running, and Mike Boggs worked for Land Acre Marine at the time. I had him out the other day kind of run this through the cables set up and how the thing works so well. So first thing we need to do is order new cable and get it rigged up and see if it's gonna do the job for us. So
I hope that goes smooth.
All that does is lift and lower the ramp.
pardon me.
That just lifts and lowers the ramp.
Yeah, and basically it lifts it up and down, and that ramp has got a lip that locks into a lip on the barge.
And then rests on the
You know, and
barge.
it rests on the barge, and it's got like 10-ton counterweights on it. They help compensate for the extreme weight of the ramp, and one of those counterweights is dropped off, and those cables need to be replaced, and the safety cables need to be replaced. Main picking line cables need to be replaced. So A lot of it blocks it. I mean, we were figuring out the other day, it's been 27 years since it's been used. So,
Yeah, it's pretty massive bridge. I mean, it's
Really?
big.
yeah.
Okay, so where are we? That was North Harbor construction schedule review. Any questions about the North Harbor?
Where all the boats gonna go? It looks like it's gonna be pretty full down South Harbor.
Yeah, they're pretty much all gone.
Yeah.
We're ready for the move.
Yeah, I
Just
think
gotta
we're
get
ready.
done.
I mean, I have a few guys, but I'm also kicking a couple guys out. It's been a wonderful tool in,
Spring.
okay, I've got, half a dozen paying customers that want your stall, so either pay up or get out.
What's
So
gonna
I've sent a
happen
couple
to-
impound letters out.
What about Bill Beal's boat?
Well, I'm not finding the spot.
I'm still on your list, right?
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay.
Everybody's on the list, yeah.
You're on the
I've been
list.
asked several times, what's the procedure for
Long
repopulating
list.
the North Harbor?
Well, it'll just, the people that want to come back get to come back.
So we can
The
hope to get somewhere,
pioneers get-
something like where we
Yeah, I
plug
mean,
back in where we
within,
left?
well, within reason, where your exact location is now a 50-foot stall. So, you might have to go over to the B float or this number 2 float, but, that kind of thing.
Is there a time to sign up, or should we just trust that it's all gonna work out?
Well, the way, I haven't heard anybody that left that wants to stay. They all want to come back. I haven't talked to anybody that wants to stay down the South Harbor.
So you may not get the same block of water.
Yeah, you probably won't get that, but it'll be in the same harbor with the same
I was hoping
smiling
for
face as you walk.
Slightly closer to the ramp.
There you go.
Everyone's
There you
hoping.
go. Yeah. I think we'll go through and kind of assign stall for stall numbers and, yeah.
I think we gotta sign up by age, Bob,
Yep.
when it comes to getting
I
closer
keep
to
telling
salt.
Arnold
Okay
and
with that.
Strumdahl, they're in charge, because those guys have been harping about it since day one. So, anyway, I think Marshka's waiting for our call if we want to.
Okay, well, before we call him in, we're gonna cover the electrical request. And we're gonna call and have Mark Morris talk to us and answer questions. So if anybody has any questions, might start thinking about it. And,
So just to let you know, we had Chris Jensen put in a formal request, and so I went through and had Mark Morris, our electrical through PND, so we're gonna get a bill for this, put together options. We talked about this a year and a half ago, so he put it down on paper again, and we have a couple of options. One option is option number 1, which energizes energizes those big stalls out there on the end, so that we have capable of having 480s out there in
How
our
many
75.
outlets is option 1?
480s, as well as.
Well, hold on a second. Then
No.
we have 400 amps of power to go out there. You probably understand this. So Kestrel wants 100 amp. That leaves 300 amps, so you can break it up into 60 amp increments or 100 amp increments, depends on what you want. And
So you'd have 3 100s or,
yeah, or you could go,
Or
you could go
5
5,
60s,
6,
yeah.
exactly. You got it. So, yeah, so that's what
Okay.
you have. You have
So,
400 amps in
But
it.
just let me,
Yeah.
so if
Sorry.
you look on your option number 1, what you will end up with is an additional 480 receptacle, which will go to the westerly, and some spare capacity to add another 2 100 amp 480s. Now, the 100 amp 3-phase that is already designed will stay there. The 50 amp single phase that is already in the design will stay there. So this is addition, and that will cost you $120,000. Option number 2 is the Kestrel's power center will be modified. The Kestrel's power center out there has 100 amp 480 3-phase receptacle, as well as a 100 amp 3-phase 208. We will adapt that to have one westerly 480 and keep the rest of the float the same for 134,000.
That's option 2.
That's option 2. We ran this all through Bill Schattenberg, the contractor, because you'd want to make sure that the contractor's estimate and the design estimate spot on. By the time the contractor gets his 105,000, you add a 10% markup for Western Dock and Bridge, you get Power and Light has to put a bigger transformer in, all of that, you're at that 120 or 135 break. So as your harbor master, if you're going to go down this route, I would recommend option number 1. But
Why is option number 2 more money? It seems like.
that's where we need Mark Morris. So let's call Mark and we can ask him those questions, I think.
Yeah, a lot of the cost in option 1 is the cable.
Yep. And the reason is because those power centers out there, it's putting 2 power centers in.
Okay.
And option 1 is wire, just wire, there's no power center. We're just wiring.
Hello, Jody. This is Debbie calling from the Petersburg
So there
Borough,
would
and
potentially
there's
be
looking
other
for Mark,
costs of
please.
bringing a power center.
Thank you.
The power center itself, another power center.
That's all included in that 120.
No, 100, there are no power centers in 120, there's power centers in 135.
Oh, hold on.
They're just putting out big meters out there.
It seems like it'd be a lot more effective to go cheaper and
Hello, Mark.
more.
This is Debbie in Petersburg. I'm here with the Harbor Board and Glow, and I'm going to put you on speakerphone, okay?
More bang for
Thank
the
you.
buck, but maybe I'm not seeing something.
You got us? You got us here, Mark?
Yeah, I gotcha.
All right, cool.
Well, hi Mark, this is Glow. Hello. We just, maybe you want to take us through the options and we've gotten to the point where we're dealing with the electrical request for
Okay.
North Harbor.
All right. So let's open. Have you got a set of the Petersburg North Harbor drawings?
Yep, I gave them each in their packet, E2 and E3.
Okay. So let's start with sheet E2.
Okay, so let me stop. You have 2 E2s here. If you take the one and go along the black line here you have the north slope.
Not you, Mark.
Okay?
Okay.
It's confused.
Great, they're ready.
You ready? All right. So we've got 2 options, and option number 1, overall, it's going to provide capacity to install 480 volt power for the Kestrel, which is currently in the plan, and it also provides 480 volt power for the Westerly, for Chris's boat. Option 1 does this by installing a panel on float 1, which you can use to power additional 480 volt receptacles in the future, and we'll go through that. But that's a high-level description of option 1. So now we'll go through the details. Okay, so if you see the power center that is shown on the existing concrete transient float number 1, power center 1 and 10. Does everybody see that?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, that is in the current design. That was bid on. And that power center has a 100 amp 480 volt 3-phase receptacle for the Kestrel. When the Kestrel is out of port, that power center has 2 208 volt 100 amp 3-phase pedestals that the harbor can use when there are transient vessels tied up on the outside face of float 1. Those receptacles are not used when current design. So option 1, we remove that power center completely. And we replace it with pedestals. And if you go to sheet E3, you will see that there are 2 luminaire-only pedestals on the inside of concrete transient float 1. They're labeled pedestal 1N11 and 1N12. Does everybody see those?
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so going to the pedestal, if you guys can remember the design, what the pedestals look like in the North Harbor is a 6x12 galvanized steel tube that is about 2.5 feet high, 3 feet high, that has the power lugs for the pedestal inside it. And on top of that tube, there's a 4x4 galvanized steel tube that goes up to about 7 feet high. And on each side of that are a module that's got a meter in it, circuit breakers, and receptacles. And that's the way Middle Harbor is. And that's our design for Petersburg North Harbor. So what I do in option 1 is pedestal 1N11 will have 2 100 amp, 208 volt, 3-phase receptacles in those with meters on that pole. And then 1N12 has 2 100 amp, 480 volt, 3-phase receptacles with meters and circuit breakers on that pole. So we are providing 2 480 volt receptacles now out on transient float 1 at one pole, and then the 2 208 volt ones on the other pole. So we're providing the same service that we were in the base design for the Kestrel and for transient vessels, but we've added a second 480 volt receptacle, and that's for Chris at the Westerly. And in the current configuration, 1N12 is over on Chris's side of the float, and so the cable for the Kestrel would come off of 1N12, whereas right now it's coming off the power center, which is farther down the transient float. You guys can shuffle those back and forth. You can tell me, no, put the 480 volt receptacles on 1N11 and the 208 on 1N12. What you cannot do is have one pole with a 480 volt receptacle and a 208 volt receptacle, because down in that 6x12 section of the tube where the lugs are, we can only bring 1 voltage in and back out because there's not enough room for lugs for 2 voltages.
Okay.
Where would the
Does
additional,
anybody have any questions on that?
where would the additional 2 be if we wanted to, it says expand to potentially have 4 480 100 amp.
Yeah.
Where would the other 2
Well, that's the beauty of your configuration in the harbor, is that you can add those other 2 480 volt receptacles to any of your existing pedestals on the 75-foot slips. You just have to do it in a pair. Now, that's not entirely true, because pedestal 1N9, the one where Chris is sharing it with another boat right now, that 1N9 in the design has 2 208 volt 100 amp receptacles, right? One for each boat with their own meter and breaker. And we're going to take one of those off of 1N9. So what you could do in the future, if you had one boat that wanted 480 additional, you could put them on that 75-foot stall opposite Chris and turn 1N9 into a 480 volt pedestal. Or you could put them in one of the other slips, but when you do that and you change that pedestal over to 480, you have to change both sides over. So you can take on any of your pedestal locations, you can take the meter entire receptacle circuit breaker assembly off that pole and replace it with a different one. We can reuse the feeder cables because option 1 will locate panel 1H, it's called. I'll put that right next to panel 1N because panel 1N feeds all the pedestals on the 75-foot floats. So the cables will be long enough that if you want to change 1/2 of 1N9, because it's only got one, over to 480, you just take that cable out of panel 1S, shove it up into panel 1N, and you just change that power head to a 480 volt power head and you're done.
I see.
So once you switch to 480, then you lose your ability to have 30 amp standard shore power or 208 three-phase power in those stalls? Sure.
Right, when you switch to 480, you just get 480, that's all you get. That's right.
Okay.
But if you, the two 208 volt ones that we have out on the concrete transient float, those will be type A's, which have the 208 100 amp and the 208 50 amp.
I see.
Any other questions?
So Mark, this is Kurt. You knew I was going to have more questions for you.
Yeah.
Hey, so if we're looking at 1N9 and say that went to 480, just for throwing out a scenario, 1S14 directly across from it, that would be 208 three-phase plus the 208 single plus the 30 amp regular 120?
Yes, that's right.
So if a boat did slide into there and he didn't want that 480, he could, if nobody was in that other stall, could use that.
Right. That's right. We will have to, as Kurt pointed out, we will have to adjust the wiring on the 1S pedestals so that they're all fed together and they go back to panel 1N and the 75-foot slips. If you go with option 1, the 75-foot slips will each have a dedicated cable. So if you switch them over to 480, the pedestals on the other side of the dock are not affected. But I think your guys' need is when a vessel shows up and they want 480, you give them the 480 by moving a cable and changing out a power head. If they leave and a new vessel comes in and they don't want 480, then you put the cable back in the panel that it was fed out of and put the old power head back on.
How hard is that going to be to, I mean, that sounds pretty simple to me, but how hard would that actually be in reality here when you have linemen in town? You're going to have to get a certified electrician to do that, Mark?
I think you would bring one of the PNPL guys down there and they could do it in the morning.
Oh, okay. Okay, good to know.
I think I think what you folks have shown me as a client is through this whole process is that you have a need for 480 volt three-phase in the harbor. And we looked at that initially in the design phase, and due to the budget requirements that we had, it was just unaffordable. So we took it out of the design. And then in the 11th hour, when the Kestrel was giving Glow a hard time about not having 480, I took all the spare capacity out of the system, because an engineer always designs with a little spare capacity. I took it all out, put it in that power center, and gave it to the Kestrel. So now we have one vessel with 480, and you have a system that doesn't have any room for growth in it. And what option 1 does is recognizes the need for 480 volt power at Petersburg North Harbor. Not very much of it, but some of it, and gives you the opportunity to accommodate those unusual requests when they come in on a case-by-case basis, and gives you the flexibility to switch the pedestals back and forth over a period of years, so you're not stuck with one or the other, that you can go back and forth. And as I mentioned to Kurt yesterday when we discussed it, I believe that most of your boats that need 480 do not need a 100 amp receptacle. A 60 amp receptacle is a standard size for believe that it would be in your best interest to get Chris on a 60 amp receptacle, because that panel 1H, is good for 400 amps. I know the Kestrel needs the 100. I've looked at their load. They cannot live with a 60. But Chris may be able to live with a 60. So 6 times 5 is 300, plus 100 is 400. So the Kestrel gets 100 amps. I think you could have 5 60 amp receptacles off of panel 1H. Or you could have, give Chris a 100, and then you would have room for 2 more 100. So you get more, you can serve more vessels if you give them a 60 amp receptacle.
Or you could take that extra 200 or the 200 that's left over and just give you 360.
You could do that. If Chris needed a 100, you could do that, yes.
Okay.
But what it does is, by bringing in a larger panel 1, option 1 has this panel down on the float next to panel 1N. I call it panel 1H for high voltage. It has 2 cables that go all the way back, down main walk 1, across the head walk, up the ramp, to a transformer up on the approach dock, a new transformer. It's the same size as the utility transformer that we have up there now. So we're going to have to shuffle the cards a little bit on the approach dock to make this work. And then it goes into the switchboard, the main power center for the whole harbor. I have to increase the switchboard from 1200 amps to 1600 amps to accommodate this additional energy that we're providing down on the float. And then Joe with PNPL has to increase his transformer to accommodate that additional energy. But in doing so, I'm also bringing a little spare capacity back into the harbor that we lost when we put together that power center.
So you're going to go from a 300...
I believe that from an overall electrical design, this kind of gets you back to where you were before we added that power center from an overall capacity standpoint.
Right, so you're going to change that transformer from a 300 to a 500?
That's right. That's right.
And that was all in that $120,000 bid?
That's exactly right.
Oh, so speaking of that, Mark, so can we look at that 120,000 addition as more like $60,000 to the overall show? Because you're essentially giving back the cost of the power center. So really, it's not costing us 120,000 more, it's only costing us 60 more, or how about that?
Yeah, unfortunately, we can't do that, because in my cost estimate that came out to 120,000, I credited back the cost of the power center.
Okay, so it would be the 7.1 million plus 120,000.
That's right.
Okay. Just
That $120,000, does that include the modifications that Petersburg Municipal Power and Light would have to do too, or is that their own, is that an additional charge?
No, it includes that. And what I have done, so everybody understands, is I did a cost estimate to Glow, and then Bill Schattenberg has provided, he's the electrical subcontractor, he provided a cost to Western Dock and Marine for option 1 of $105,000, and he excluded from that Western Marine's markup and the additional cost to increase PNPL's service transformer, and that steel plate that the service transformer sits on, that has to be modified. So I believe when all that is said and done, you'll be back up in that 120,000 neighborhood. So we don't know the exact cost yet, but it'll be in that ballpark.
So when you say shuffle the cards on the deck there, it looks like that 500 kVA transformer is going to be 6 feet long and 4 feet, so 6 feet long, 4 feet wide, and 3 feet high. And the other one was only going to be little over 4 feet high and 41 inches wide and 32 inches. So we're not looking at a lot of difference, are we?
Well, what we're doing is we're adding a whole other transformer that isn't there now.
Right.
So, Glow, do you happen to have the full set with you?
I don't.
No.
Sorry.
So, if anybody can remember, on the approach dock, we had as you're standing on the approach dock, looking towards the water, you had the gangway on your right, and then there was a section of the approach dock to the left of the gangway that had a long rectangular panel board, if you will, a switchboard. And then to the left of that was the utility transformer. And then there was the guardrail, or the railing. And then moving from the ocean side of the gangway towards the road, you had 10 feet of empty space, and then you had the 8 foot by 8 foot waste container. And then you had a 7 foot space so people could get past the waste container and the dumpster headed to the catwalk for the grid. And then you had your dumpster. So that's 8 foot by 18 feet. So that's kind of your layout there. So what we have to do in order to make option 1 work is we have to take Joe's transformer, the service one, we got to slide it towards that waste container. Well, now I don't have my 10 feet clear in front of Joe's transformer. So I have to spin his transformer 90 degrees so that it still has the 10 foot clear sideways now across the approach dock instead of longitudinally. And I have to put this extra transformer that takes the 208 volt power that we get from Joe and steps it up to 480 before it sends it down to panel 1H. And I have to put that where Joe's transformer was. So that's what I mean by shuffling the deck. I think we can do it. It's not as clean as what we initially wanted. Doesn't give me working clearance in front of this new transformer. It would only have to be worked on when it's shut off. But I think we can work through those things.
Jeff? Any more questions? Anybody have any questions for Mark?
You want to go through option 2?
Is there any reason we should?
More expensive.
If you could do it real briefly, I'd be kind of curious as to why the difference in price.
So what option 2 does is it attacks this problem a little differently. It gives Chris what he needs, but it cuts off any possibility of ever doing this for anyone else. It gives the harbor department, a reason to say we can't do 480 in the harbor no matter what.
Oh, okay, that's where that.
And the way that I do that is I keep the power center down there. I take the 208 volt receptacles out of the power center and put them on one of those light poles on that float. Put a bigger transformer in the power center and give it 2 480 volt 100 amp receptacles. I run 3 cables up to the switchboard, increase the size of the switchboard, increase Joe's service transformer, put a big breaker in the switchboard to feed it, but there's no way you could do any more past that. And I don't think that is in your long-term best interest, because I do believe that you're going to end up with more requests for 480 and you're not going to be able to deal with it. But it does address the issue that if you want to not do 480 in Petersburg, North Harbor, this is a very nice way to guarantee that you can't.
Roger that.
And it costs more than that.
Yeah.
So in your opinion, Mark, how many harbors in Southeast with a fleet makeup like we have 480? Or is this kind of a one-of-a-kind thing because of the Westerlies' desires and the Kestrel's needs?
We put in one 480 volt receptacle in Aurora Harbor like 20-something years ago for one of the tugboats, and I haven't been down there recently. I heard rumors that they scabbed onto that to do another one for one of the tugboats in Juneau's Harbor. That's the only location that I am aware that this has happened. But I just did a project up in Dutch Harbor. I did it all at 208 with 100-foot slips. They've now come back to me and asked me for 480. I believe the fleet is going to drive it. I believe that these boats that are almost as wide as they they are long that are coming out. Some of them are set up for 480, so I think it's inevitable. I think every harbor in Southeast that has a fleet configuration like yours is going to have to face the reality that you're going to have to provide 480 volt power to some boats. I think it's inevitable.
And I think this would be a great option for at least 6. At least we could offer it. We wouldn't have to provide it immediately, but we could offer it.
Yeah, you've got a limited capacity to do it because we've designed this as a 208 volt harbor. If we start from scratch and we design it as a 480 volt harbor, then that's different. But we haven't designed this harbor that way, so I think that there's an operational restriction there that you have to deal with.
Mark, have you stayed up at night dreaming about what it would have looked like to go 480? What would the prices have been? And just off the top of your head, without really we're not holding you anything, but would it have been close to about the same cost, or would it have been a little higher?
It would have been higher because you need 2 big switchboards up at the top.
Okay.
And so we would have made the approach dock bigger.
Okay.
You have to, in order to do a 480 volt harbor that also has 208 in it, you put in your main switchboard. Your service transformer gives you 480 volt power. You run that to your main switchboard. That switchboard feeds your panels down on your floats that are 480 volt panels. And then you have a very large step down transformer fed from that switchboard that steps your power down to 208. That power goes into another switchboard that's the size of the one that you have now, and that distributes power down to your panels on the float that are 208, and that way you don't have any transformers down in your float, and you have both voltages available. So it would have cost you more money, no question.
Any other questions for Mark, or we let him go? Thanks a lot, Mark. Appreciate your letting us fill us in on this stuff. I mean, I really didn't have a clue. So I don't know about the rest of us, but anyway, thanks again, and I'm sure you'll hear from us soon.
Okay. Thank you for your time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Mark. Good.
Now the philosophical questions rather than the technical ones. No.
Yeah.
I like the idea that it would be so easy to change them. I didn't realize it was going to be that easy.
So as far as like equipment operation, is there a real advantage to using 480?
Just when you need a lot of juice, 480 is the only way you can go.
Uh-huh.
I mean, 100 amp.
Because
208.
with a higher voltage, it's easier
Yeah.
to deliver it.
See, right now I'm getting 480 in the North Harbor, not to bore you guys here, but it's a 60 amp receptacle, and when I step it down to 208, I get 138 amps of 208 three-phase. Where you can't have a 136 amp breaker, for 208, just wouldn't carry it. So.
Yeah, Bob?
Yeah.
Well, just to back up on the history of this, I know I'm not very informed on the big boat stuff, but all I use power for is tools and charging my batteries. If I want to run my deck hydraulics, I start my engine. Why can't you big boats do the same thing? If you want to run some equipment on your boat, fire up your whatever your boat's made to do and just do that. Why do you need harbor power to do these, I think of it, at-sea functions?
Yeah. Other than just the warm-up time, the running time of the generator, and then having a generator spinning. Like if I want to move a piece of equipment, something off my deck, and if I have to say, well, gosh, I got to start up the generator to do it, I may not do that project right away. Mm-hmm. Now I just walk in the back door, just flip the switch, run the crane, do what I want to do, and then I'm back to doing business again. So it's just a convenience.
What about expense? Is the electrical part of it cheaper than diesel?
Oh yeah, by far.
So that would be a point right there. I think that like what I get from Chris's letter is that he put a bunch of 480 motors in there. But I don't understand how he runs it off his generators. How does he run a 480 motor?
He's got some 480 generators. The generator end's going to be 480.
Oh,
You can wire, you can
I see,
configure them to 208 or 480 or, I'm just.
So
realized
in looking at the cost, it seems like it makes sense that you would want to be able to plug in if you're going to sit there at the dock and run your circulation pumps or whatever. But as far as the cost for the increase in expense on the harbor, I personally think it's a power and light issue. And I just soon put it in the hands of the assembly to decide who's gonna pay for it if that's the way we wanna go. I don't know, what do you guys think about putting 480 down there? It sounds like it might be necessary in the future. At least we'd have a couple stalls.
Yeah, you wouldn't, I would recommend not wiring them all in. I mean, the only one that I would wire in would be that one box right ahead of Chris. Let Chris and the Kestrel run, one off of, run off that one box he was talking about, and then put one more in, and that's it. The rest of them should be 208. Then have capacity, though, to fill them up if somebody comes in that says they want it.
And that's covered under option 1.
Yes.
Right.
It'd be covered under option 1. Where if option 2 only gives those 2 guys power, and then you're never going anywhere else.
Yeah.
And then the problem is if we stay where we're at right now, if somebody wants 480 power, doesn't happen. You can't even think about it.
Not in that harbor.
Not in that harbor. Yeah, no. I mean,
Is
if you're gonna do it, you wanna
there's
do it now.
480 available in the South Harbor?
No.
I didn't think so.
Is your boat 208 though?
It is 208, but I have transformers on both of them.
So you have to step it down anyway.
I do step them down, yeah.
Is
So I
there
can go
a
either
way to
way.
step up? The guy could have his own step-up transformer? Is there
You can
such
do
a
that.
thing?
Yeah, you
Could
can do
Chris
that, but
just
you
get-
get half again, then you only get half the amperage.
Could Chris
So if you
just
go
get
from
one of
100
those?
amp, 208, then you're only gonna get 50 amp 480, which doesn't really do much for you. Well, it's a little less than that, it's not 50, it's even less, it's like 38 or something like that.
How many boats similar to the Westerly are gonna come and plug into the harbor and wanna run their refrigeration in the summer with a load of salmon?
I don't think you're gonna wanna run refrigeration, I think what you're gonna wanna do is after you're done, let's say, and you get a day off, well, maybe, I'm just saying, then you can plug in, shut off your generators, have it quiet, you know how that is. I don't know if you've been on a boat all summer long with generators running constantly. It
Can
is
he
so
plug
nice.
in to the harbor, 208, and you have heaters going and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
why does he need 480, I guess is my question? Just to run
You'd
his
have
circuit
to
pumps
ask
and
him.
stuff?
I think you'd have to ask him that
Okay,
question.
I wish you would have been here.
Yeah, I do too.
Well, I think his cranes are 480, and I think he'd like to be able to, just convenience, I think, more than anything.
Yeah, for running a crane, it seems
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I don't know.
yeah.
But we're, that's a pretty narrow view at this point, because we're just looking at the here and now. I'm thinking, if we put the harbor together the way it is right now, planned at 208, you're never gonna be able to go down this road. You can't even think about 480 in this harbor. Because, you won't be able to back up and say, well, let's put it in for 120,000.
Maybe there is opportunity down there to get, we're looking at Samson Tug, looking at Petersburg, maybe they're gonna need a stall.
Well, and that
I know-
tugboat that he was talking about,
Yeah.
my son-in-law drives that, and if he were to, he passes through town every now and again and spends the night, if he knew that there was an open stall with a 480 there and shut the generator off.
Can I get a little background on the Kestrel's 480? Why do they have special powers and they get 480?
Well, because we were faced at the time with, that's all they can hook up to, it's that or nothing. They bought that float for $480,000, half of that float for $480,000. They, it was one of those things like they'd just given us $20 million for the state had just given us $20 million for the waterfront, and that power, that power box, that power center was a $35,000 price.
Are they reusing that?
But yes, to get the 120, that's what they're refunding in order to get the 120, get down to 120. So
That's
because we
significant.
had enough power to scab everything and whittle everything down, we could scrape enough power to give the Kestrel what they needed. And at the time, we talked to these guys as bosses, and they said, well, it's one more reason to, maybe move the boat or, look at some other place. So
What does the Kestrel pay for moorage?
the Kestrel,
Yeah.
they pay roughly $3,800 a year,
How about Westerly?
about $3,600.
Pretty comparable.
But I guess probably the power consumption is what
Yeah.
It's a lot.
what's power and light get from,
Power and light,
Benefit.
yeah, they're the ones that are gonna.
They're the ones that are making money on this. I
Yeah.
agree with Mike, they're the ones that are gonna make money on this thing.
So if we recommend option one, where's the money coming from? Is it coming out of our Harbor budget?
Well, that would be up to the assembly, you know,
Yeah.
to really make that call. You know that we came in, we had $8 million by scabbing together our piggy bank and what money that the harbor had to offer. And then
Joe's
going
reserves.
to Joe for the 1.26 power estimate and going to the city general fund, their property development fund for a couple $100,000. Well, as it turned out, the electrical portion of the final bid wasn't any less. What came in less is to get to the 7.1 versus 8 million. What we estimated it at was the, you know, it was pretty much the mobilization and the profit margin for the company. And so we ended up having to give back. They transferred back to the, out of that 8 million that we originally had, we transferred right away 200,000 back to property development. And then because the garbage dump, we're taking all the North Harbor dredge spoils, that bid came in considerably higher than what, or that estimate came in considerably higher than what the original was. 200,000 of our money went up to that to take care of, to help take care of the baler issue. And so now we're down to having in our contingency, our piggy bank, about between 400,000 and 500,000. So probably, you know, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's something we,
I remember my question.
oh,
This 120,000, how firm is it? A lot of times when you
Mark
retrofit.
Mark answered that, and I gotta say that he was spot on the estimate versus what the
It's still an
bid came in.
estimate, though.
It is, but
And then
but like
as-
he said, but let me finish. Schattenberg came back and he already gave you the hard number for his portion, which was 105. So we know that he's gonna charge 105 for the 120, and Power and Light has to put in a bigger pan for the
Which they estimated at 10.
So
Once it
they,
all fits up.
and then Western Dock and Bridge puts in 10% up on that, so we're looking at 121,000. So it's pretty darn close. So I don't think you're gonna,
So if the harbor comes in, construction happens, and there's no cost overruns, we should have $400,000 left in our grant.
not grant, no,
Well, in
no,
our,
that grant
okay, the
money's,
money that we got from Joe or wherever. it
nope,
came
nope,
from.
that money's all been spent, Mark. It's in that 600,000 we got in raw fish tax last
Okay, so
year.
it's raw fish tax money, all right.
So
That's what
it's
it
still
is.
in the harbor fund.
Yep, still in the harbor fund. It doesn't go back to anybody.
But that's set aside for contingency,
That's
which
set
there
aside
was
for
originally like a
Eight
lot.
mil- yeah, there was a lot, almost $1 million
It
bucks.
was
Yeah.
900,000 and
Yeah.
now it's down to 4.
So, you know, I mean, people have talked about us, you know, if we have to borrow money, that we should pay it back. I think that's a great idea for Joe. I think Joe should pay for this extra 120 if this is the way you guys decide to go. And then he can make, you know, I mean, I talked to Mark yesterday for about 40 minutes, so I kind of got boned up on what was going on because Mark and I are, you know, become good friends here. But anyway, you know, it's about $219 a day for a 100 amp 480 receptacle. $219 a day is what they could take if they wanted that. So if we're paying 6.8 cents a kilowatt hour, we're getting charged at 11, let's say, that's 4.2. So let's just call it 25%, just for easy figuring. Well, 25% of 220 is $55 profit per day for Joe Nelson, you know, for the city, I guess. You know, so how many days do you got to do that before you pay off a $120,000 loan? Follow? You know, so what I'm thinking is that, you know, this is not a bad investment for Joe to look at by providing the power for, and not only, and what Mark and I were talking about too is you have to look at that value that we or the potential that we don't see yet. You know, what if, like he was saying, you know, you have somebody that wants to come to town, that wants 483 phase, and that's going to be the determining factors where they're going to stay, if they can get it or not.
If there's only one other place in
Southeast, yeah.
it's-
It's Juneau, well, then they'll go to Juneau. We lost, well, I wouldn't say we lost, but the, what is that, one of those Nat Geo boats that run around here, They were up there doing gold mining all winter long up in Gasno, or just outside of Gasno Channel. And they were looking for a place to come and lay for the rest of the spring, so they didn't have to run the boat back to Seattle, but they wanted 480. So they ended up laying at the AJ dock up in Juneau because you can get 480 there. So, you
Well,
know,
what got my attention
Gillespie
was
and
the-
Stevedore's got that.
He mentioned that very thing,
Yeah.
that, you know, this is the, down the road, that's where a fleet this size is gonna go with some of the boats, the newer boats coming online. So I kinda can see a need for it, maybe not now so much, although we do have requests now, but I don't know, it does seem to make sense to plan for the future, even
time
though
to
it's
do
only
it.
a few.
If you're gonna do it.
Time to do it. If you're gonna do it, it is the time to do it. And I know it's one more, you know, it's one more feather in our cap. And talking to the Dutch Harbor people, yeah, but they're tying up, I mean, it's a different kind of a caliber of boat. It's a, you know, it's a Silver Dolphin they're tying up. And so it's, you know, the Westerly is a small boat out there. The Kestrel are small boats out there. And they regret it. They're now gonna try and put 480 in. And they wish they would have done it long ago. But you know, I don't know, we are a forward progressing harbor. Our harbor is, leaps and bounds ahead of every other harbor
This is
in
our last one,
Southeast.
though, unfortunately.
And
Kurt,
it would be.
why are people putting in 480? Smaller wires,
Yeah, all kinds of
more
things.
power out of
Yeah,
the
yeah. You
electric
know, and I
motors.
haven't had to buy any electric motors, you know, but,
They're not that expensive
yeah, no.
relative to
Yeah,
other stuff.
they burn less amperage, I know that. So, I mean, I can run a 20 horsepower motor on 208, and it's gonna be X amount of amperage, run a 480, and it's gonna be less. So you actually burn less in amperage.
What's the voltage at our crane dock, where those cranes run on?
So you're basically getting a lot more work out of
That's all I would
your
like.
KW generator on 480 than you are on 208.
Just like going
So
from 110 to
for a boat to
220.
be wired like that would make sense
Yeah.
in that regard.
Well, I personally would be for option one, but it's just figuring out where the money's gonna come from, and I think that it's a power and light thing, because they're the ones that are gonna benefit, other than the particular fishermen that are plugged into it. But
And
they're
I
gonna pay
don't
for
think
it.
you're gonna, you know, that being said, I don't think you're gonna get much more out of Joe. He's gonna be.
Well, it's an
So,
assembly.
it's gonna come back, you know, but just be prepared that, you know, we may have to,
He's been a little cranky since we took the 1.2 million.
yeah.
Well,
and
it's unfortunate that, you know,
It's not really up to him.
Yeah, even Hickman and I were talking today, change comes very slow and painful for this town, very slow. Now that, you know, I mean, the pill we've had to swallow is that the states don't own our harbors anymore, and we have to. I had to raise the rates here the last time. I mean, I'm paying maximum rate right now for all three of my boats. I was not looking out for myself, because I realized that we now own these things, and we have to now pay for it. And so, as a collective city, we own this harbor. Joe is going to provide the power. Joe is going to make the profit off the power. Joe should put the power in. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. That's not the way it used to be, but that's the way it is today.
And he has, 1.26
Yeah.
is nothing to scoff at. That's the only way
But it
we
was
got.
like putting
power.
bamboo underneath his
He's the
finger
only
down.
enterprise fund that has a profit.
Yeah.
And if you look at the same scenario with the water in the harbors, it's not gonna pencil out,
Yeah.
you know, unless you
So.
go ahead and raise those rates too, and, you know, when those are coming.
Well, they have
The
to
stu-
come.
We did the study, and
Yeah.
the rates are gonna go up
And-
for sanitation and everything, but.
And I think that maybe we just have to realize that, you know, and to mull it over and maybe put it to the assembly that this is something that we realize is a,
And
you
we,
know, is
we
a
can
need
recommend
and-
one of his options. It's gonna come down to the assembly to figure out
Yeah.
where the money's coming from. I mean, unfortunately,
Yeah,
you know, whether they
Maybe
take it out of
they'll-
our pocket or.
Take
Yeah.
our harbor fund.
yeah.
Or split it, you know, I mean, maybe that would be a thing that,
Yeah.
you know.
To be forward-thinking, I think option one would be a good idea, because it's easy to switch, well,
Yeah.
relatively, you get more bang for your buck, it's cheaper, and you can switch back over to 208. and you
Right,
could
and you have a potential at least for
Some
4 to
480.
6, you know,
Yeah.
yeah.
Option 2 looks terrible, I can't even,
No.
think of a reason to even look at it anymore.
Yeah, yeah,
Relatively,
yeah, right, right.
That's probably why he gave us two
Yeah.
options.
Maybe.
To show you
But-
what-
Well, because I asked him to,
Yeah.
just,
I don't think Power and Light's gonna sell a lot more power either way, because people who have 208 are gonna, most of that power is gonna go to heat, occasional usage of equipment. I don't know if they're gonna sell much more power. I
it's
don't think.
amazing how much power they sell down there in that South Harbor. with
What are they
those
burning
100
over there in the
amp
Kestrel? Are they
freezers.
growing?
Those, the Deer Harbor will come home to a credit in the summertime of $4,000.
Huh.
He told me he's moving to Wrangell, it's cheaper.
Yeah, he's
He
out of
left
here.
already.
I don't know.
I mean,
But, I mean, that is,
My electric
it's
bill in the wintertime
amazing.
is close to 400, and I leave the galley range going and the heaters going, so I walk down to a boat that's warm.
Yeah, but that's independent of your voltage. That's just running heaters. I don't think
Yeah.
that's gonna go up much if you have 480.
No, while I'm on that for it. I'm just saying,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
I'm just telling you how much I burn now, is all. So boats of similar size or
They make
like
a
mine will burn
lot
that
of
much.
money off of the harbor.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a cash cow.
It
Yeah,
is.
It's,
It's a-
it's plain
I
and
refuse
simple.
to shut the power off.
So you guys both of you guys kind of get a drift of maybe what we're all thinking? Is everybody kind of on the same page that it's not a bad way to go, but it's just figuring out how to pay for it? How do you guys think about it? What about you, Jeff?
I understand the positive aspects of having 480. It's a money thing.
So, you probably
Yeah, exactly.
should
It's a
put a
money
vote to,
So,
throw it.
Mike, you want a motion for option one, or?
If you guys want to recommend to the assembly that we go with option one, I mean, that, you can make that a motion, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering, yeah. So I'll make a motion to recommend to the assembly for option one as lined out in Mark Morris's engineering group paperwork.
We get a second?
Second that?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to recommend option one to the assembly. All those in favor, say aye.
Right.
Opposed? One opposed?
And I think from the assembly standpoint, with all this paperwork, I mean, you've got,
Yeah, it'd be nice to have possibly the harbor board chair at the meeting, or well, Kurt, the liaison will be there at the assembly
Yeah.
meeting. And
I'm gonna go talk to Joe Nelson on Friday when he comes in with Chris Jensen.
So we have
Making a date.
four people for recommending it and one against it. Let's vote.
Okay.
Does Kurt get to vote?
No,
No.
1,
Oh,
2,
thank
3,
you.
4.
Okay.
Well, we haven't filled
So
that
you
seat
voted
yet.
for it?
I didn't vote at all.
Oh, I thought you did.
Are you abstaining or are you voting?
Still think it's.
We gotta
We
make sure
didn't
we
talk
get
about the
this
money, part of it. We want it to come out of our contingency fund.
straight.
Are we
That's
going
like
to
your-
assume that's where it's going to come from?
You know, I think what, maybe the decision here should be just made whether or not you guys think it's a forward-thinking idea or not. And then worry about where the
It
money's
seems like
gonna come from.
it should have had
Okay.
another message there besides just we're for it or not for it.
It's a good
Because we're
idea,
concerned
but-
about the costs and, what else is going to be that we don't know. I think it's, if 480 is going to be the thing of the future for some boats, and then definitely there's boats like tugs that require 480 that you'd have possible business from them in town here that, because it's available.
They're usually working.
is the money going to be recouped by having it in the harbor?
because,
Would be my question.
because right now, the way we're sitting, the state is taken care of, the Kestrel is taken care of in this new electrical contract, correct? So we don't really have to do anything if we don't want to. So I mean, if the assembly says we don't have the money,
Yeah.
Then it's kind of Chris's problem at this point.
So there's three definite yes. I'll vote with Bob no, but just because to give a little shadow of doubt for the.
I'm not a strong no, I'm
not either, but we're concerned.
I'm just,
Whoa,
there's a
whoa,
lot of
whoa.
other uses for this
That's
120
kinda weird.
workflows that would
Is it?
benefit
Well,
dozens of people.
It takes.
if we actually have 3 affirmative and 2 negative, we can't send a recommendation because it
Fails anyway.
it
It
failed.
fails,
Right.
so,
Yeah.
3 to 2 fails?
yes,
Yeah,
takes 4. 7-person board, it takes 4.
we gotta have a majority.
Oh, I see.
quorum, oh, yeah,
Yeah. Majority of the board number.
well, that's fine.
So, anyway, I guess we can not do much. You just leave it as is, or the assembly can bring it up, or Chris is
Oh,
gonna have.
come on, you guys, let's, come on, take a stand here.
If one person
What do
who
you want?
voted no wants to change the vote, they can move to reconsider since they're wrong.
You want us to,
Okay,
I'm gonna
yeah.
change my vote? Am I that powerful?
You are.
Move to
You can
reconsider.
change the recommendation.
Well,
Well, changing your vote.
Since it failed and you're on the winning side, I believe that's the way it works.
What
Just a
is the winning
suggestion,
side?
Yeah, no, the fact that,
No, because of the quorum.
Yeah, we
Require the
have at least four
Four for positive.
affirmative.
I'm pretty comfortable that the council or the assembly can deal with this issue as well as we can. But don't you think they'd rather just bounce it back to us? I mean,
no, it won't at that point.
If it's not recommended by the board, I don't
Yeah,
think it'll get.
it's not going to
favorable.
get on the agenda.
Consideration.
Won't even get on the
I mean,
agenda.
basically, what the board is recommending is, are we gonna look into the future or are we not? That's
Yeah,
what we're
I'm all for
recommending.
looking into the future. I don't see a way we can pay for this without it coming into other harbor priorities. But I'm not unwilling, I don't have to kill it right now. I could change my vote and pass it up to the assembly if that's, tell me how to do that.
Just do it. I'll be the negative one.
Well, there's gotta be.
Okay, so, should we redo the vote?
She
Okay,
just needs-
all those in favor of recommending to the council option one, respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Wow, it's
look at
unanimous.
that. 5-0, okay.
They buck
Okay.
up.
Oh, that's such a,
Well, the money is
Can't
gonna
be
be decided
regulated.
by the assembly regardless of what we think.
Yeah.
And I just think it is forward thinking and let the assembly battle with it. And
I think if you wanted to make a statement, maybe that stated that, you like to be forward-thinking, but you just don't know where that money's gonna come from, and, because we've got some concerns about where the rest of the money's gonna go, kind of make kind of a.
And I
cover
think the
statement like that.
contingency money
Yeah.
is gonna need to be there in
Mhm.
case we do need it.
Mhm.
If it ends up not being needed, then that's another
Then
story.
maybe that's where part of it could come
Yeah,
from. Yeah.
but for the time being,
Yeah.
I don't think that tapping that
Right.
for this is a good trade.
We'll pass that
That's
on.
just my own.
Well, I believe in this year's the budget for the city, the borough, there's an extra $50,000 is going out of the general fund to the harbor from the raw fish tax, so I'm not saying so let's rob it
Yeah.
back, I'm just
Yeah.
Yeah.
throwing it out for information.
yep.
I myself personally would like to convince Joe, I mean, just to bring him along and say, this is a new era. This is the way things are gonna have to be done. I mean, I was talking to Doug Weldy, if the city were to develop land of their own and put in water and sewer and power, they would have to foot the bill to put it in there before they sold the lot. So,
Well, take Chris with you and have him,
and he is coming with me. He said he will be here and he will go.
have him put his
Okay.
face
I wish
on.
Chris had been.
Yeah, I do too. But anyway, okay, so any more on that, or we can move on to Harbor Board open positions.
How about the lure park?
What?
And the next one is the.
Oh, sorry. Oh,
Mike's
God.
fault.
These glasses.
We're on Harbor Board open
Running
position,
the show.
and we have two letters of interest. One from Jim Strumdahl and one from Bob Dolan Kupinoff.
And Kathy just sent it to the board before the assembly, they just want a recommendation, who would, so you get to nominate.
Okay, does
yeah.
anybody have any ideas on who and why we should recommend to the assembly to fill the Kurt seat on the Harbor Board?
I kind of like the idea of Bobby Dolan, because he represents, Cooperoff, and he's been around, but has a little bit of a fresh perspective, though Jim has a lot of expertise.
Yeah, I would tend to agree myself. I like the idea of having somebody from outside the original city proper to give some different perspective.
Right,
Yeah,
and,
I think that's
kind
good.
of a fresher perspective, too.
He's got some piston and rudder connections that are interesting.
And I talked to Bob a couple days ago here. We were
That's
talking
true.
about the Kupinoff dock, and he's got some real insights on that, and that's just something that's gonna come before you guys, as to what to do with that. And, I mean, knew the dock was in pretty poor shape, but not as bad as what Bobby was describing, so.
But Jim's a
I
good,
want
strong,
permission to be
conservative
excused.
fiscal voice. So,
Thanks for coming, Mark.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, any comments? I mean, it'd be great to have both of them, but I think we have one empty seat, and I kind of like the idea of having somebody from the outlying area, whether who it is. Just like you say, and he's active in the harbor as well.
Now, this is going to be a recommendation to the assembly to appoint.
Correct.
And as assembly member, I'm just gonna vote however you guys vote. I'm not gonna have an opinion.
They're both very strong applicants. I don't want to take a position really.
So you don't want to make a recommendation to the
So,
assembly?
I'll make a motion to appoint Bob Dolan to the Harbor Board vacant position.
I'd second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to appoint Bob Dolan, or recommend to appoint Bob Dolan to the assembly. All those in favor of that recommendation, say aye.
Okay.
Opposed? Okay. Passes.
Thought you weren't gonna take a position on the file.
And I didn't. I didn't oppose.
You voted aye.
I wasn't going to oppose anybody.
Okay, Kathy
I'd like to
sent
reconsider
this
my.
Lure property, I guess, the old piston and rudder site. So I went ahead and got the plat here for you, as well as the last assessment, 2013 assessment of the two pieces of property there. So they have stated that they've received an appraisal on the property and of $275. And if we're interested in it, then recommend to the council, or to the assembly to maybe negotiate for it.
This would be a benefit to the trolling float?
Well, there's a building there that, could be used for all sorts of possibilities. Also, what it gives you is a ramp and a float. It gives you also a legitimate reason to use the dock that Ocean Beauty owns and by right has to provide access. If we're just interested in saying where the float is and maybe Ocean Beauty. I've talked to John Black, who is the vice president of Ocean Beauty, about it, and they were at one point interested in the building. But if they were to own the building, I said, well, what if we went in partners and you bought the building and we bought the tidelands, because there's pilings and a float there, and maybe we could put some work floats on either side of that, and could we have access? And they said, no, we'd board it up. We don't want people, just the general public going back and forth on there.
What if there was no ramp?
Huh?
What if there was no ramp?
Right, so he'd said, well, they'd block off the end of the building, so there's no
yeah.
reason to have a ramp.
So
Anyway.
there's no legal public access down that dock.
There is if you own a reason to go down there, I guess, yeah.
So if you buy this building, you have legal access down the Whitney Fidelio dock. I
So-
mean, unfortunately, they can't deny just from usage, I'm
They
sure.
can deny walking through the building
If
by
they
own it.
if they own the building.
if they buy half,
They'd buy the building half, and they'd close the end, and you couldn't get on and off that dock.
Except by boat.
Right, yeah,
Yeah, if you're using that for,
yeah.
So this includes the tide
It's
subtitle?
the two, and you can see the way it's set up is on your page here, it's like this, two side by side instead of like this. So you'd probably have to have it the lines redrawn so that this is the building and this is the float, and, if we
Would-
just wanted to own the tidelands, which aren't all that valuable to anybody, I wouldn't imagine. On the assessment, they have the tidelands valued at $161,000, and the building valued at 113.
Would they consider, I wonder, trading for some of the leased property that they're leasing from the city out at the piston and rudder site
Oh, you
now?
mean piece and rudder? Yeah, maybe.
I mean, that would cut it in half maybe if we just traded them
And
sometime.
then they could pay tax on that side.
Huh?
Yeah. I mean, instead of just buying this, we could trade the tidelands and with something that we already own that they're leasing and then own this. I don't know, it's just something to
Why
think about.
would we want to own this?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, I guess the you know,
Joseph,
for me,
here's a question for you. I mean, I'm looking at it thinking this would be an ideal spot for somebody to do a private business, marine-orientated business. You know, unfortunately be in competition with Lure, but I
That
mean,
would
it
be
would
good.
be that type. I mean, do you see, I mean, you're in that type of business. Do you see any need for being right on the water? Or,
Not
Yeah.
really.
yeah.
No? Or
He's got a bicycle.
it's sure nice to be able to pull up.
No, I'm not asking.
I've got a boat,
Okay.
you know, it's all in that.
Well, the reason that I thought that
Money
this would
out,
be
your
good
overhead.
is just that we were talking about putting in a workflow. And here, you know, there's more storage. And we're putting stuff in containers right now.
yeah, for us, for the harbor perspective, I could see that the building could be an ideal place for a shop for our, like Mike mentioned, we're living out of vans right now, and we're beg, borrowing, and stealing area, and it's, you know, we've owned these harbors now since 2006, and it's becoming increasingly difficult to do a lot of our own maintenance, and because we just don't have the space for storing things like the extra chunks of bull rail that we could buy in bulk. We don't have the machinery. We're out, you know, we do a lot of partnerships with different departments, and they end up housing them. We've bought the forklift, and now we don't even really know where the forklift is. And, you know, I mean, there's just those kinds of things because we don't have a place. We've often thought about, we keep adding AML vans to our little fleet. We replaced one this last year. We've been sending them over to the Middle Harbor parking lot. So now we've eaten up about half of the Middle Harbor parking lot. And I've been watching a building of 2 vans and a shed roof going up there by Mountain View Manor. I've been taking pictures of that because maybe that's something that we can afford to do here soon and eat up even more of the Middle Harbor parking lot to give a place for, you know, just for our own utility needs as well as our vehicles. We've got things out at the Baitehead House storage. If we end up, trading that with piston and rudder, I don't know where we're going to reposition those. We've got anyway. So there's a real need for a decent workbench that's not in the back room, as well as that idea of having usable work float space. We're talking about, you know, this troller work float that I think is going to be a real nice addition. There might be some more room out there for maybe putting some gill net work floats.
Now, where is the troller work float gonna go?
On the end of the skip float.
Into what?
Skip float.
So
Oh,
really
okay.
close to this.
Yeah.
So is that building big enough for what you think you need? Because I like your idea, Mike. There's no fiscal note attached to this if you trade land that Mike is already leasing from the city for this piece. Boom.
And if we had
And he
to buy
still
the
pays
buildings,
property tax
yeah.
on that.
This may be
Well-
Mike's personal property, and I don't, is it,
Yeah.
are they, there may be
I think it
different,
is.
not be apples to apples.
But he is
Well-
leasing title lands
Yeah,
from the
yeah, he's
city.
leasing land from the
Piston and
city.
rudder is.
Well,
There's
his
a
com-
lot of
Piston
land that he's
Rudder
leasing
is,
from us.
But this may be Mike personally.
Yeah.
It seems to me that
I bet it's.
the harbor would be better served by a land-based spot rather than out on a pier that, up in this place.
I agree.
You know, you're talking about storing materials,
Yeah.
there's no place.
Because we've got, we potentially got the drive-down facility. That'll be ideal for bringing your boom truck, whatever, down to do your dockside stuff. And you can, for $260,000, you can get a lot upland and put a little building on it.
Right.
So,
Right.
And then you really got some storage.
You got
Yep.
solid ground and you can get to it, you don't have to worry about going down the pier
Yeah.
in the summer or the winter.
Does it have
Wintertime
four-
snow
does
and
it have
summertime
480?
busyness.
I think
Really?
it,
Probably have.
it might.
You know, we're talking about the idea of, you know, it'd be ideal for somebody to grab it and there they'd have their own little personal tie-up spot.
Right.
They tell us that it's too shallow.
I wonder if he's got
For
a
me.
non-competition type deal like Trident did with Midcock Cannery in there.
Oh, maybe.
You wait,
I don't
with
know.
Mike?
Yeah.
That would be up to Mike, wouldn't it? He owns it.
That's what I heard a couple of years ago. It was-
So if some private individual did buy it for a tie-up and put a couple sailors there, it really wouldn't bother the harbor picture, would it, or
We'd lose a couple more.
what's that?
We'd lose a couple more folks out of the harbor.
Well,
Revenue.
yeah.
We're hemorrhaging from Murgus already, so.
Yeah, I don't know. Just some options, I guess.
Yeah, so
You know,
anyway, that's the
that-
only thing that I could see is that we could use the building for a
But would it be
workshop.
enough, though? But would it be enough?
Probably not.
Okay, that's the point I was getting to.
So
You know, ideally, what we'd really like,
How about your office up there on the second floor?
hey, you know,
looking
that,
both
it
ways?
is an amazing, it is actually an amazing view of the entire
Entire
harbor. You can
basement.
see, you know, out past Icicle, all the way down to Turn Point there. It is the very best view of the entire harbor is
You
right
could tear
there.
your shack down and then put parking in there.
Hey, there you go.
And then
Yeah,
you
you
guys
could
could
do
move
that.
upstairs to the,
Yeah. But the ideal building, you know, just to put in your thinking cap, is that Petro Marine, the old Petro Marine, or the old Union.
Is that for sale?
Union Oil.
Yeah, Union
Yeah.
Oil dock with the
Loading dock.
dock, you know.
what happened to that? Weren't we
That-
trading for that at one point? Whatever happened to that?
Listen, or, I mean, Petro Marine always kind of, they comes to the table and then they
Okay.
move back away from the table.
I remember that was a
Anyway, that's the
consideration
one that we
years ago.
really would like to, at some point.
Okay, anything more on, anybody want to talk
So
about?
we're gonna pass on this deal?
It sounds like it. I don't know, was it, I didn't hear any motions or anybody got any ideas other than, you know, the letter's gonna go to the.
I'm not gonna make a motion because I'm not for it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna vote against it anyway.
Well, I mean, it could be done in a form of a motion that you guys don't want anything to do with it. I mean, I don't know, is that out of respect for those guys? Is that you've made your decision that, you know, instead of non-decision?
You
Well,
can
some-
make a motion.
You could
to
make a
pass.
motion and then just turn it down, you know, just say it's not gonna be,
Yeah, you guys make a motion in the affirmative and
Yeah.
vote it down.
yeah.
Okay,
put it down.
somebody make a motion.
Or we could just let her slide. and
Yeah, you could let it slide.
That's a little less strongly way to state
It's,
it.
it's sent to the borough anyway, I mean,
I think we just let her.
yeah, that's fine. Okay, anything on communications, board discussion items? Well, we could, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, say that.
Okay, all those in favor of adjourning, adjourn. Thanks.